Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on.
What's up, DC fans? We unite here at this time from all different kinds and backgrounds to discuss the latest in DC Studios news and leaks. And of course, this is premiere week for Creature Commandos. I did a previous video talking about the initial reactions. It seems to be the word of mouth and buzz seems to be positive going into this release. We'll have to see what time these episodes drop on Max. They didn't really give like a set time, so we'll definitely be here ready for to do like reaction videos and highlights as far as the episodes. And then also this weekend, CCXP. I'm again not seeing a lot of scheduling information, but it sounds like Saturday is the day. It'll be like the DC Comics panels, and then perhaps we'll find out something with DC Studios. Now, what's really cool is it's been revealed to us DC Studios will have an official podcast that they're going to be dropping. I guess is bi-weekly.
Welcome to the DC Studios Showcase. I'm Frankie Smith.
And I'm Tyler Coates.
This official podcast is presented by Max, and this is a series where we'll deconstruct and celebrate all the latest and greatest from DC Studios. It's going to be so lit here. I'm so excited.
I'm excited to be here.
Each and every episode, we'll be joined by our comic correspondent, Corey Jandra. Here we're going to talk comics, culture, feature exclusive interviews, talk with creators, break down and deep dive into episodes and movies and all that good stuff.
Batman Forever's soundtrack rocks.
This is what comic book can be. This is what TV can be. This is what storytelling can be. It is perfect TV.
And this is the perfect time to become a DC fan. We have so much stuff going on, and you guys are going to learn all about it here on this podcast. Each episode will drop every other Friday. You can find us on Max, the Max YouTube channel, or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
And that's dropping this weekend as well. So you got the Creature Commandos, you got the DC Studios podcast, and then whatever happens at CCXP. So we're gonna have a lot to react to, and we're definitely reacting to here as James Gunn talks Creature Commandos and Superman. David Corenswet's gonna freak everyone out. Now, I've been saying, like I said, just for the longest, as soon as Corenswet was hired, even before he was hired for this role, I was like, yo, this dude has acting chops. This dude he has gravitas. But let's see him as an action, hero, right? That's what we haven't seen him as yet. He has his chance right now. He's shot the Superman film, and James Gunn is raving about him, amongst other things. We have this article from the Hollywood Reporter, where again James Gunn is talking about the start of the DCU, and he drops a little information here and there as well, amongst again other things here, as they ask him when you and Peter Safran brainstormed your master plan for the DCU, what made Creature Commandos the right entry point? Good question, because of all things to launch a universe, I never would have guessed Creature Commandos would be the show. Again, according to my friends and other outlets, they're saying this is a worthy entry point. So I'm going to, give it the benefit of the doubt, and we're going to watch the show, of course, when it comes out. But as James Gunn mentioned, as far as how Creature Commandos came into existence, like where did this come from? It was after the success of season 1 of Peacemaker. HBO was wanting Gunn to do more DC stuff. He had different ideas, wrote the episodes for Creature Commandos, and then all of a sudden Gunn is hired as co-head of DC Studios. So he's like, oh, well, I was working on this Creature Commandos, so we're going to go ahead and pass that through. And now here, there's this conversation about canon. I mean, when you're dealing with any comic book genre, any major franchise or cinematic universe, the question is always about canon. What is canon and what is not? And so they're asking Gunn here again. They interviewed him for Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. They said it was worried whether those arcs and storylines will remain valid in the new DCU. And it says he answered the question almost immediately by referencing events from both. Should we treat Suicide Squad and Peacemaker Season 1 as prologues to the DCU, or are they canon? That's really the question, right? Because again, that's as comic book fans, as DC fans, that's always part of the question for our head canon. Gunn says they're light canon. I know a lot of people was like, "Oh, is this a reboot? Is this a soft reboot? Is this this is Gunn keeping, the stuff he's been working on and kind of working in a new Justice League." I've been reporting that for 2 years now, right? And so that's pretty much what we're getting. Gunn says Peacemaker is pretty straightforward, with the exception of the appearance by the Justice League at the end. The Justice League don't exist yet. Now that's interesting. Gunn, he kind of gave us a nugget there. We know in the Superman film there's the Maxwell Lord, the presence of that, and the corporate Justice League International, though we don't know if they're going to be called that, right? So that's kind of what this has led me to believe, that maybe the whole Justice League thing is not a thing. It's just corporate heroes. And then the actual Justice League, of course, Superman, it sounds like, will be the one that forms it. But as Gunn says, they don't exist yet in his DCU. Now, that leads us to the whole New Frontier possibility, where in that comic and in the animated film, that the center is the inciting event that makes the Justice League form, right? To stop this big bad. So just intriguing, when Gunn answers these, we look through and dissect everything he's saying, but he's saying the Justice League don't exist yet. But his rule for the DCU, dealing with the past DCEU stuff, is that if we mention something from the past in one of the new DC shows, then it happened. So that's the way we're dealing with it. That's so New 52. Like, that's literally what Gunn is doing here. He's taking a New 52 approach. If y'all don't remember when those comics, that comic initiative with the DC Comics, where people was wondering, okay, after the Flashpoint saga, what happened, what didn't. It's kind of a shame. Like, the Flashpoint event was great, but some of the storylines, I was like, man, they was kind of cooking, because you had, after Final Crisis, is Batman dead? No, Batman was time displaced, right? So you had Bruce Wayne like in another time, and then you had Dick Grayson as Batman, Damian as Robin, and it was kind of cooking with that. I just, in my opinion. And then, of course, after Flashpoint, they kind of just reset everything, and it's like, what continuity, what existed before then? Well, if they acknowledged it, then it existed, right? Like, they acknowledge, Nightfall, then okay, it existed, Killing Joke and things like that. So that's pretty much how Gunn's going to do it. It's a very loose canon is what we're seeing with this. Now you have THR here. They're asking sneaky questions of James Gunn. Again, he's kind of hinted us a few things, because we're going to dissect everything he says, right? If he's going to tease something or not. But they said G.I. Robot, who's voiced by Sean Gunn, his brother, G.I. Robot in live action will be quite something. Has that subject been broached in some capacity? Now, Gunn says, yeah, we've talked about all these characters in live action as far as Creature Commandos. We already know Rick Flag. Yeah, that's one thing. But well, what about Dr. Phosphorus and everyone? Like, how would they translate to live action? Gunn says, we talked about all these characters in live action. How would we do them? If we did them, if they survived the show, that's one thing to keep in mind as well. There's gonna be stakes to the show, just to let you know. This is the Suicide Squad, and everyone doesn't make it out of the Suicide Squad, right? Gunn says, I don't want to give away any secrets, but we use some technology in Superman that's completely new in regards to this kind of stuff, as far as translating, like a robot character, a CGI character. So Gunn says, we would know exactly how to do G.I. Robot. And G.I. Robot is kind of becoming a popular character on social media. People are interested in his backstory, how it ties into the wartime with Sergeant Rock, and they're talking about doing a Sergeant Rock film, Daniel Craig. That seems to be a real thing that's being put together for the DCU. And again, how to bring these characters to life, like G.I. Robot. Gunn saying there's going to be some interesting technology in the Superman film. And so that makes us think of Metamorpho. We didn't see any behind the scenes footage of Metamorpho, probably because this is new technology, right? That they're using. And then also the destructive monster, which was, that may be a kaiju or something that's going on there. They may be using this technology for that. Now, interesting thing here, of all the characters of Creature Commandos, seeing the roster, I was always intrigued of, the Frankenstein and the Bride, and even, G.I. Robot, definitely Dr. Phosphorus, because of the Batman connections, obviously, that we have there in Gotham. But Weasel, that's always been a butt of a lot of jokes, and like, why is Weasel coming back? Like, what is Gunn's fascination with Weasel? But it appears he may have the most badass backstory of the Creature Commandos, which I wasn't expecting, animated as well. So they asked him, most of the episodes provide backstory for the Commandos. And that's a cool thing too. The premise of the series is not such a linear thing. You see the team, but then they go into the backstories of all these characters and how it connects to other DC, characters, Easter eggs and spinoffs from there. So each episode is going to be pretty interesting how it dives into these characters to make you, I guess, care about them because they're most likely D-list or even lower, right? But it says, well, Weasel's backstory is the ones that most knocked you sideways. So the director of Creature Commandos, again, he stepped in and helped Gunn with this, says, I found Weasel's backstory to be heartbreaking and touching and emotional in ways that you would never associate with Weasel. It was by far the most surprising backstory. And looking at the trailer, progressively, they show like Weasel a little more serious as they go. And I keep telling people with James Gunn, I know we look at James Gunn as comedic on the surface, but this dude, he has some dark stuff behind that too, man. He can write some pretty serious stories with these characters. And that's why I said with Guardians 3, you look at Rocket Raccoon, he has a tragic backstory, right? And I think the same with Weasel. I think Gunn was like, well, let's lean into probably a tragic backstory for Weasel. We're going to care about Weasel in this Creature Commandos. Are we getting the Weasel trilogy? And then we get to hear, as far as what they're pushing about David Corenswet, how much Gunn is pumping up Corenswet overall. And like I said, I become a fan of David Corenswet as far as just his work on smaller films and his presence, and looking at the behind the scenes stuff that we've been covering on this channel, like of him in action. I'm like, let's see what he got, right? So Gunn really is pumping up David Corenswet. He says, I feel great. Superman is an enormous bear of a movie. Some people called it epic in waiting. We'll see. It's completely different from the show as far as the tone of Creature Commandos. You got Peacemaker and you got Superman here. DC can do multiple tones, so that's good to hear. Personally, it's very much fantastic as well. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, Gunn says David Corenswet is going to freak everyone out how great he is. He is one of the best actors I've worked with. He can do everything. The man is incredible. All I'm saying is David Corenswet, like this dude, he has acting chops. To bring that to the action world, that remains to be seen. But Gunn is raving about him. And then personally, my question was about Peacemaker. Like I said on this channel multiple times, I wasn't a big fan of Peacemaker season 1. I just wasn't. John Cena did great. I have no problem with the Peacemaker character. Was so obscure, you can make up whatever you want with that character right now. So I get why Gunn and Cena made those creative choices. And Cena is great. He's become a pretty great performer, right? Comedic timing and things like that. And obviously the action, you can put Cena in action. So I had no problem with Cena in the Peacemaker show. I was more upset about Vigilante and other ancillary characters. And I hope Gunn brings a better, show for those other characters. And I don't know if Vigilante would be redeemed in my eyes, but hopefully he's not just a buffoon. He's supposed to be like the Punisher. But according to Gunn, he said season 2 of Peacemaker going to take people by surprise. He says we take a very different route than the first season, which was okay. He said it's a really magical story that people are going to be blown away by. And he mentions Frank Grillo, of course, is a major part of that as far as Peacemaker season 2 and Superman. His character Rick Flag Sr. from Creature Commandos. This is stuff I want to hear. Like this is again. Are you sweet talking me? Because all I was saying with the Peacemaker was that I had no problem with taking creative liberties with obscure characters. I understand like these characters, if they're not mainstream, you can kind of do your own thing. But just some characters though, like Vigilante, got like a second life. Like there's probably obscure in the comics, but they got a second life in Berlanti and Arrowverse, and Gunn kind of freaked that, and that's what I didn't like with Vigilante. But we'll see if that'll be redeemed. We'll see the overall tone of the show. I'm willing to give Peacemaker season 2 a chance. That's coming out right after Superman in 2025, late 2025. So I'm willing to see what you got, right? Because the replay value for me of season 1 is not there. Maybe it is for some of y'all. I don't mind. Again, we're all DC fans here, united here together from all kinds and backgrounds to talk this DC news, right? So I understand there are fans of what they did in season 1. I just wasn't a fan. I don't go back and say, let me watch this first season of Peacemaker. Maybe some of y'all do. But hopefully we get something that can satisfy multiple audiences in season 2. So very interesting remarks and quotes from James Gunn directly, really getting us again geared up for the Creature Commando series, the new DCU. It really seems like this was all kind of planned and plotted. Like you have the end of Superman and Lois, where they show you the death of Superman. A great version of that story. Now, like this has to be put in the annals, what they did in Superman and Lois. But as you close that book and that chapter, you have this dawn, the new DCU, right? And this seems to be really planned. And then in the DC comics, if y'all comic readers out there, they got this new initiative, the All In initiative and the Absolute DC. So it's like new beginnings everywhere of DC entertainment overall. And it's a pretty exciting time, just in my opinion, of DC. So as I mentioned before, with Creature Commandos, we'll see like the release times of that. Like if it's not a good time to go live, we'll do our reaction and highlights video of Creature Commandos for sure. The new DC Studios podcast. Again, I'm not sure what time that's going to drop this Friday, but we're going to get our reactions together. It's going to be multiple videos. I still got more topics. I got a backlog of DC entertainment topics that I want to bring to y'all and tell you what I'm hearing about stuff as well too, for the members. Appreciate the members' support. And then we got CCXP. Again, not sure what the schedule is for this Saturday, but we're going to make sure, again, we keep y'all up to date with the latest in DC Studios news and leaks.